I had grown used to the sound of applause. It was my lullaby, my heartbeat, my proof that I was a god among insects. The roar of the crowd, the smiles, the flags with my face on them. It was everything. But lately, when I stood before the cameras, their smiles looked thin, the cheers hollow. And at night, when I finally closed my eyes, I didn't hear applause. I heard whispers. Homelander floated above the city in the dead of night, capes snapping in the wind. His eyes glowed faintly, but he wasn't really looking at the city. He was staring past it. For weeks, he hadn't slept. Not really. Whenever he drifted, something pulled him down into a nightmare. And not just any nightmare, the kind that wrapped around his throat and squeezed. He'd wake drenched in sweat, fists clenched so tight his knuckles split open. Sleep is for mortals, he told himself. I don't need it. But he did, and every night, the shadows came closer. The first dream was simple, a dark hallway, flickering lights, and the sound of children laughing. Then he saw himself, not as Homelander, but as the boy he used to be, alone in a white room, screaming for a mother who never came. He'd wake with his jaw aching from grinding his teeth. But then the dream shifted. A burned man with claws on his hand started appearing. His grin split wide, his voice wet and scraping like knives. Hiya, kiddo. Been waiting for you. Homelander hated remembering the facility, the sterile walls, the scientists in masks, the tests, the way they made him cry just to measure how quickly he healed. He was never John. He was an experiment, an investment, a child who'd never felt the warmth of a real hug. And Freddy knew. Somehow, the monster in the dream knew everything. In one nightmare, Homelander ran through the white corridors, barefoot and trembling. Every door he opened revealed his fans, thousands of them, cheering. But their applause warped into screams. Their faces melted, their eyes gone, their hands reaching for him like claws. On a stage dripping with blood, Freddy appeared. Your fans don't love you, homie. Freddy cackled. They just clap because they're told to. They turn on you in a second. Homelander blasted him with heat vision, but the beams fizzled into sparks. Freddy laughed and raked his claws across the boy version of Homelander's chest. The pain followed him back into the real world, a searing ache that didn't heal right away. For the first time in his life, Homelander felt weak. Freddy fed on fear. Ordinary people gave him morsels, gasps, cries, screams. But Homelander was a feast. The man-god's ego was a skyscraper, towering and fragile. And Freddy had found the cracks, abandonment, rejection, the gnawing fear of being unloved. Every night, Freddy dragged him deeper. One dream, Homelander stood before a crowd waving Vought banners. He raised his hands, basking in their cheers, until the banners turned red. The fans started booing, and one by one they pulled out guns. They opened fire, and instead of bouncing off, the bullets tore into his flesh. He fell to his knees, bleeding, looking up at faces that once adored him. Freddy leaned down, claws dripping with gore. Look at you, big man. You need them. Without the cheers, you're just a scared little boy crying for mommy. Homelander woke screaming, shattering every window in his penthouse. The sleeplessness began eating at him. During press events, his hands trembled. He snapped at assistants. His eyes wandered as if expecting Freddy to appear behind the cameras. Reporters whispered that he seemed off. Vought's handlers noticed, too. They gave him pills, doctors, rest days. None of it mattered. Freddy was waiting every time his eyes closed. The dreams grew more violent. Freddy showed him Madeline Stillwell. Her face burned, whispering that she'd never loved him, that he was a freak to be used. He showed him the 7 turning their backs on him, fans tearing down his posters, children pointing at him and laughing. And every night, Freddy killed him in new ways, burned alive, torn apart, drowned in applause that turned into blood. Waking became harder. Homelander knew he couldn't keep running. One night, too weak to resist, he let sleep take him. The White Room returned. The boy version of himself sat in the corner, knees pulled to his chest, sobbing. Freddy stood over him, licking his claws. "End of the line, homie. Gonna carve you into pieces and feed on that juicy little ego of yours forever." Homelander's rage boiled. His cape flared. For once, he didn't see himself as a god. He saw himself as that boy in the room, weak, unwanted, broken. And then, in a burst of fury, he embraced it. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Homelander snarled. His voice shook, not with fear, but with venom. "I own fear. I don't need their love. I don't need anyone." The dreamscape twisted. The White Room shattered into a sky of endless storm clouds. Freddy blinked as Homelander rose into the air, lightning crackling around him. The boy was gone. Only the god remained. Freddy lunged, claws slashing, but Homelander caught his arm and crushed it like glass. He burned Freddy with heat vision, ripping him apart piece by piece, screaming with laughter as he did. "You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing." The dream world quaked. Freddy howled, but even as his body dissolved, he grinned. "See you soon, kiddo. You can't stay awake forever." Homelander woke at his penthouse, bathed in sunlight. The city below went about its business. He walked to the window, looked down at the streets, the tiny people, the billboards of his perfect face. The cheers were still there. The applause still echoed, but in the back of his head, Freddy's laugh lingered. And that night, when Homelander closed his eyes, he felt the shadows waiting again. For the first time in his life, Homelander understood what it was like to be prey. Homelander stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. His smile was perfect, polished teeth, unbreakable jawline, eyes sparkling with warmth. The same expression he gave the cameras, the fans, the children who reached out with their little flags. But the longer he held the grin, the more it slipped. His eyes twitched, his lips trembled. Behind the mirror, he thought he saw a flicker of something, someone, watching him. He clenched his fists until blood seeped from his palms. He healed instantly, but the mirror stayed cracked. For the first time, he wondered, am I awake right now? Freddy had changed the rules. Before, Homelander only saw him in sleep. Now, Freddy's grin appeared in reflective glass, in shadows cast by floodlights, even in the cheers of crowds. During a live broadcast at Vought Tower, a reporter asked him about rumors of fatigue. Homelander laughed it off with his usual charm, until he looked at the crowd. Instead of smiles, he saw burns, faces blistered, children with hollow eyes, chanting in unison. "We don't love you. We never did." His smile froze. His heart pounded. Cameras clicked, oblivious to the horror only he could see. Freddy leaned against the podium, invisible to everyone else, and whispered, "Don't mess up your lines, homie. The world's watching." Back in his penthouse, Homelander ripped apart furniture, shattered glass, screamed until the walls shook. But Freddy was always there. He appeared as Stillwell's corpse, cradling him with her burned arms. He appeared as Maeve, laughing, telling him the truth, that no one would ever love him if they saw what he really was. He appeared as the boy in the White Room, sobbing, begging Homelander not to leave him. Homelander tried to fly away, high above the city, among the stars. He thought he could escape, but Freddy's voice slithered into his ear like static. "You can't fly out of your own head, sport." Homelander's perfect vision faltered. For a second, the city below looked like a graveyard. millions of tombstones stretching into the horizon. He blinked, and it was gone. Was it a dream, or had Freddy broken into reality? Freddy didn't want to kill Homelander. Not yet. Fear was sweeter than blood. He began pushing him, whispering in his dreams, then nudging him awake, convincing him that his fans were plotting against him, that Vought was laughing behind his back, that even the Seven secretly despised him. The paranoia festered. Homelander's speeches grew more erratic. His smile stretched too wide. Reporters muttered about uncharacteristic behavior. His handlers scrambled to cover for him. But Freddy grinned in every shadow. At one rally, when a child handed Homelander a drawing, Freddy twisted the picture before his eyes. It wasn't a smiling Homelander, but a monster with claws, dripping blood. The child's voice echoed with Freddy's laughter. Homelander dropped the drawing. Cameras caught the flicker of fear in his face. It spread online in seconds. Is Homelander cracking? The applause grew quieter. The adoration dimmed. Exactly what Freddy wanted. One night, Homelander couldn't take it anymore. He downed an entire bottle of sleeping pills and let himself fall, determined to end it once and for all. The dream hit instantly. He stood in a stadium filled with tens of thousands of fans. For a moment, relief washed over him. They were cheering, applauding, loving him. But then the lights went out. When they came back, every face in the crowd was Freddy's. A sea of burned grins, all chanting his name in mockery. Homie, homie, homie. Freddy appeared on the Jumbotron, claws scraping the screen. Time for the encore, superstar. Homelander roared, flying into the crowd, tearing Freddy's apart by the dozens. But they reformed, laughing, multiplying. No matter how many he burned, ripped, or crushed, the crowd only grew louder. Then he heard it booze. The cheers twisted into jeers. The stadium thundered with hatred, drowning him. He dropped to the ground, clutching his ears as Freddy stepped forward. You can't kill me, because I am your fear, and your fear ain't going away. Homelander jolted awake in his penthouse, drenched in sweat, his chest burned with claw marks that refused to heal. The city outside still sparkled. The fans still cheered somewhere, but in his head, the stadium's boos echoed louder than any applause. He walked to the mirror. His reflection didn't smile back. It grinned, a burned grin, eyes hollow, Freddy staring out at him from behind the glass. Homelander smashed the mirror, but when he looked at the shards on the floor, every single piece showed Freddy's face. And Freddy whispered from all of them at once. Sweet dreams, homie. We're just getting started. From that night forward, Homelander could no longer tell if he was awake or asleep. Every cheer sounded like a mockery. Every smile looked false. Every reflection hinted at Freddy waiting. And in both dream and waking world, one truth gnawed at him. If his fans ever stopped loving him, if they ever saw the real him, he would need Freddy to kill him. He'd destroy himself.